Well, oops. And looks like the camera is having trouble focusing, as is not uncommon. There we go. A little better. So it is almost half an hour after I would otherwise normally go live, and I apologize for that. But I forgot. I was actually like thinking, okay, I have a few minutes. I was watching some videos and was like, okay, I had like half an hour to go and then 20 minutes to go, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna watch a couple YouTube videos. And then before I knew it, suddenly, it was time, and we were. I completely forgot that. I completely lost track of time, literally. I've also been sick the past couple of days, so apologies for that. I will be coughing all evening. In fact, I should probably grab some tea, but that's going to be a little difficult right now as I'm waiting for folks to show up. Maybe I should just do that now because it always takes a few minutes for folks to show up. So I'll do that. Tea is brewing. Oh, I should put that up too. Was in such a rush to get going here, forgot to set up. There's Totoro. Still waiting for the water to heat up. I hear it heating up. I hear that lovely sound, that sound of water heating up and then simmering and boiling, and pretty soon you have one of the best, I'd argue the best beverage ever invented by humanity. But we're not here to talk about tea, we're here to talk about anime. Because anime is awesome. We'll be watching a lot of anime tomorrow. Unless I feel really, really bad, I'll be doing my quarterly seasonal anime watching weekend. So I'll be going live on Rabbit, and we'll be streaming all the new anime of the season, at least all the stuff on Crunchyroll. Sometimes we get to everything else, especially given streaming services. Which reminds me, I need to sign up for Funimation. Let me just make a note there. Because I don't remember if I did that or not. And then there we go. So that'll be my reminder for myself. That's good. So I wanted to talk about anime as usual on a Friday night, and particularly talk about. Been watching a lot of video game related stuff. How's The Promised Neverland? Matt Svether. I've been purposely not watching anything in preparation for the stream tomorrow, but I'm definitely very interested. Let me just see. I'm looking through the. Let's see here. And looking through the information. Unfortunately, my setup here crops off a little bit of the chat. I'm looking here to see if there's an easy way of fixing that. Looks like that's all that. Height. So maybe if I go to 25 and then hit OK, what does that do? Yeah. Maybe like 235. Oh, that's not looking good either. That's weird. 250. Oh, I get it. I get it. So I'm just going to go up to 260 here. That should give me everything I need. And we'll get that weird text here for a little bit. Cool. Yeah, I came across the manga some time ago, and wanted to check it out, but then I saw the anime was coming out and was like, I might as well wait for the anime, because the anime will at least churn through material. The manga is probably better, of course, but I kind of want to start with the anime, see where that goes, and then go back. As I've mentioned before, I have issues with children in danger, so certain kinds of danger, so kind of want to get a sense of the tone of the show. Understanding that anime isn't, anime isn't going to be the same as the manga, but hello, Gorilla Monsoon. Yeah, so that is that. I'm really looking forward to the shows of this season, and we always get this. We always get some people who are like, "Oh, there's nothing coming out this season that interests me," and that's fine. And there are some who are like, "Oh, I'm interested in X and Y." I'm always just curious to see what's out there, because there's always something that comes out that I've never heard of, and I watch a little bit of, and there's no buzz, and suddenly it just explodes. Zombieland Saga was the one from last season, I think, where it just kind of came out of nowhere once it actually premiered. Yeah, exactly. You Neverland, you think of Peter Pan, or Michael Jackson, which is not a particularly pleasant association, right? But yeah, that is an interesting thing, and it's tough because those sort of concepts, I'm not going to spoil it, but a very grim, dark concept around children. It can go, it can be interesting, or it can just be kind of, I want to say over the top, right? It can be like we're gonna milk this for all it's worth, and because we have this deep or this tragic concept, like that's all we have to do. And that's rarely the truth, I'm not necessarily invested in your show just because you have this tragic conceit. You need to give me interesting characters. You need to go somewhere with that story, kind of prove to me why it's tragic, why it's interesting. Especially one of these stories that has a very weird premise, very outlandish premise. Because I'm like, well, is this really set in the real world, or is this kind of an alternate reality where this stuff exists? Are you positing that this sort of thing could exist in our world, basically? Because if not, if it's just so outlandish, then I tend to check out unless there's some context for that. I'm like, well, does it happen everywhere? Like, is this just normal? I don't know. I can't know that. So it's hard to, those things can be done poorly, shall we say? But we will see how that goes. But yeah, I'm doing well. Other than the cold, let me grab my tea. In fact, I've got some water too. I was going to talk video games, but the more I think about it, the more I want to tackle something else, which is grimdark anime. That's a great topic. What is the anime you've watched that had a really dark premise and that really either hit you hard or just felt like that was an impressive thing, or that just didn't hit you hard, that felt like it just missed the mark in terms of the tone or the pacing of the concept. For me, for example, obviously Lane and Boogie Pop Phantom are both shows that I think really have tragic concepts but carry them well. I changed the title, Burning One, and it said it updated. That's weird. 1 second. The title on my side says, okay, good. It says Friday Anime Stream. So, okay, yeah, I changed it just before I went live, so it may have some caching issues for some folks. You're right, Gorilla Mansion, the Gorilla Monsoon. My goal is to turn this entire room into a 3D printer. One giant 3D printer that's like 3 feet wide, or like 6 feet wide or something. Okay, that's good to know. What I may do then is change the title like after every stream, so it's kind of there before the next show. There's actually I listened to a podcast, 3D printing today, with some guys, and one of them built like I think a 2 or 3 foot, size 3D printer. Just he got these rails and set it all up and built it, and he said it's very interesting. It's basically a toy because how do you find plastic filament that will last for that long? Right? The rolls are only so big; they only have so much filament on it, so you can't really print that much unless you're constantly stopping and changing rolls and such. And things get out of alignment very quickly. When you have stuff that big, it gets a little off kilter. You got to make sure your floor is completely level, and then as it's moving around, it's things are shifting a little bit. So he said he's tried it a few times. He's printed a few things on it, but it's just really hard to do. Yeah, it's incredible. A really interesting guy. He's a blacksmith too. As his job, he is a blacksmith, and he forges things out of iron and various metals and fine metal smithing and all sorts of stuff, gold and silver and so forth. So, and got really deep into 3D printing. So really, really interesting. He also made his own resin printer, not just from a kit. Like he found instructions online and built one. So pretty nuts. But yeah, you can build things. The neat thing about these designs, let me see if I can show you a little bit. Yeah, so you can see this printer behind me. It's basically rails and a platform, and the extruder's right there, as you can see, because there's the filament going up it. This is really weird, going backwards. And then the build platform goes in and out, basically. So in and out, in and out. And so when you 3D print something, the platform comes down, the bed goes back and forth, and then the nozzle can move back and forth on that platform, that kind of rod. And this is very simple. It's a very simple design, and you just have motors to move it around. And so you just extend that, get longer rods, basically, and just keep on doing it. The problem is, again, making sure everything is completely straight and level, and you have all of these orthogonal angles. It goes all... Yeah. Yeah, you'd think. I think he'll definitely give you quests. He'll make you a new coat of mail, if you'd like. I'd love to know what kind of work he gets. I get the sense that there's actually a lot of work and it's kind of shared amongst several people. So if you need new wrought iron gates, or if you need a new handle for your fence or something, then you ask a guy who knows a guy, or a gal actually. I think I have a book here about blacksmithing by a female blacksmith, which is really cool. So I think it's kind of ad hoc work as the need arises. But yeah, really, really cool. So these designs are quite extensible. Really neat. Just hard to make work right. And then actually back there, that's my new baby. That's a resin printer. And I'm going to do that for some anime figurines and some Gunpla parts. I'm going to try printing out some Gunpla parts on that, because resin gives you very, very high detail with very, very toxic materials. There's going to do more hiking videos when the weather changes. I would like to. Yeah, that'd be cool. I would love to do the what Grumpy G-san did, and kind of hike out somewhere and then do an anime review from a mountaintop or something. I think that'd be really cool. Because I think it just gives you something to look at. It's visually interesting. Unfortunately, there's not a lot. There are certainly a lot of parks in my area, but it's not particularly mountainous or hilly. Yeah, R.I.P. Grumpy. Very sad. So there are certainly beautiful, pretty places I could go. You're not quite as picturesque as I think the Rockies he was in. But yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Just find an out of the way place where folks aren't going to mind it too much. A guy standing there talking about Valve Rave to a camera, or One Punch Man, or what have you. So yeah, it's interesting thinking about this grimdark thing. I think One Punch Man, I think it is actually a pretty grim show. It's over the top and silly, but it does have this very kind of tragic concept. Who is where this main character just feels very depressed and very, very dark. But I think the tone of the show makes up for that. Of course, I haven't watched the entire thing, but just from what I've seen. Attack on Titan would probably be one of the big grimdark shows of the past few years. And certainly that tone kind of turned me off, personally, but certainly worked for a lot of people. Akira is probably one of the big grimdark works of the anime canon. When if you're going to watch, half a dozen classic anime, that's going to be one of them. And it's definitely one of these kind of absurdly grimdark movies. Although the ending is ultimately, it ends on a positive note, I would say. But yeah, it's weird. But I think there's certainly a lot that just did not work. I think there was a show from last season or the season before where it's about like a teenage girl who like rescues this little girl. And it seems to be like a very light and happy show, but it's actually very dark. And like she's killing people all the time, and she's very yandere. And I watched the first episode of that, and was just like, nope. Like I can see where they're going with this. I understand their purpose, but just they didn't quite match up those elements very well. And I think because they went to two extremes, right, where they tried to be very moe, and then they tried to like really contrast it with this dark thing, the dark theme, and this dark element to the show. And obviously that was meant, that they intentionally contrasted those things, right? So a good question. So when I talk about grimdark, I mean shows that are dark in tone, have a lot of tragedy in them, but tend to go tend to be consistently of that tone, and to a point where it gets a little ridiculous, where it feels like the stereotypical 14-year-old writing sad poems in their journal, where it's just okay, you're just throwing tragedy and darkness at me, but like there's no point to it, there's no contrast to it. It's just the world sucks and then you die. Over the top grim, right? Like I said, I think it can be done well, but it also been poorly. Yeah, I think Elfen Lied or Elfen Lied is the classic example where it's very, very grimdark, and some people feel it went just over the top, and it's just absurd, absurdly dark. Some people had that problem with Madoka Magica. I didn't. I think it is an appropriate level of darkness and tragedy, but you can get that sense that it's kind of like, okay, here's terrible things happening over and over and over, and no one has a chance to take a breather from that. There is no lightness, there is no positivity, which is why I think that argument that Madoka is grimdark is kind of breaks down, because there's a lot of light and upbeat elements and moments in Madoka Magica. Not a lot, but a significant number. And not just at the beginning, at the end as well. So, actually, I think of, speaking of Grimgar Fantasy and Ash, which I think is not grimdark, but very much, could have gone in that direction, where it starts out as this very traditional, Japanese teenagers waking up in a fantasy world where they don't have to live with swords and magic, and then it takes this, it's not a spoiler to say, there's this very tragic moment a few episodes in, and suddenly it becomes much more gritty, much more realistic about, okay, we have to live in this world with consequences. It's not just, we get to, stab monsters all day and be action heroes. It feels grounded. And I really like that, and the fact that it has seriousness and tragedy, but the overall tone is, I would say, kind of level, where it can be dark, it can be light, it can be just, life. We're just living our lives, and there are good and bad moments, but we're just kind of getting through things. So I really appreciated the fact that Grimgar does not go in that direction. Other big grimdark things. Berserk, another classic one, which I think people would call grimdark. I remember watching an AMV of, I think it was Berserk. It was Berserk or Bastard, the anime at an Otakon, and the character was just, slicing through waves of enemies, and there's just blood everywhere, and he's covered with blood, and they're covered with blood. And at one point I just yelled out, "Not enough blood!" And everyone laughed, because it was one of those things where it's just like, this is this is absurd. Like you've gone over the top. So I think yeah, that's a good example where you can just go to the point where it feels very, it feels cheap in a way. It feels like you're playing that, you're playing that card over and over again without actually doing anything with it. Part of the difficulty is that life is not all grim all the time. There are positive moments, there are negative moments. And yes, you may be having a terrible life, but that doesn't mean everyone has a terrible life. So finding that right middle ground, I think works. I think Rin, Daughters of Mnemosyne is one that gets grimdark, although it is this bizarrely peppy action series at sometimes, but there's a lot of like torture porn in it. I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a significant amount of torture porn in that, and it just feels ridiculous, especially given the concept. The concept just doesn't support that. It could support that. What annoys me about Rin is that concept, I think, can be explored in very interesting ways. The characters are immortal, and that's basic premise. And so again, it's kind of cheap. Yeah, System Grim Darkness and Sexuality is very cheap in a storytelling sense. It's meant to shock you. It's meant to say, oh wow, they're doing tragedy, they're doing darkness, and it's like, well, yeah, there's tragedy, there's darkness. That's not inherently amazing that you can think up a tragic thing to happen to a character. It's what you do with it. I think it's one of the reasons why, horror has this problem in so many with so many people, is that good horror, effective horror, is about characters reacting to scenarios. It's about the very context of that horrific moment. Alien is about a bunch of space truckers stuck in this environment where they can't get out, and this thing is hunting them, and there's just no way out, and the space is so vast they can't hunt it down effectively, so they're kind of waiting to get picked off. And so it's a very dark film. There's very little humor in Alien. I'm talking like the original 1970s Alien, and but it never feels cheap. It is done contextually, especially because they're all coworkers. Like they all signed up for that. They all signed up for this. They know each other, but they're not necessarily like family. Like they don't necessarily get along all the time. So that dynamic kind of really works in the show's favor, or the movie's favor. But often horror movies are just random teenage girl getting chased by crazed killer, and who does very bloody things. It's like, well, that is dark and it is grim, but it's just silly. And again, obviously the sexuality so inherent in many horror movies just feels cheap. And it's a shame, because the horror genre is capable of lots of really cool things. Whoop. How do I like the Hathaway's Flash trailer? It wasn't enough for me to really get a sense of it. I was actually kind of frustrated when it was over, because it was just shots of Hathaway. And some kind of big moments and a big shot of a CGI thing. And it was clearly made for folks who read Hathaway's Hathaway's Flash, which is fine, but I just don't know those things. Like, clearly, the mecha you see in there, you're supposed to go, oh my gosh, it's that. But I don't know what those things are. So it was just kind of, it was a thing. I haven't seen the second one. That trailer for Hathaway's Flash is like all I want to see of it. Like, I do not want to watch every trailer for Hathaway's Flash. I want to go into it blind. I've heard and read about Hathaway's Flash enough to get a sense of the direction it's going, but not really something I want to know everything about before I go into. But definitely interesting. Definitely a thing that, by seeing and it's one of the hard things about trailers, by seeing the visual style, and by seeing the fact that the trailer is very slow, if you will. It's not throwing a lot of action shots at you. That lifted my heart. Like, I want a show. I want a thing with that pacing, with that style. So looking forward to it. Definitely. We'll see. Gundam definitely had its grim dark. I would argue that Gundam Thunderbolt is very grimdark. I think I said that in my review, where I think it just goes kind of over the top, grimdark. Kind of unfortunate. But again, anime, especially anime in America, was founded on these darker works. You know, Akira. Yeah, Hathaway's Trash was not not a Freudian slip. You know, Akira, Ghost in the Shell, which I think is not grimdark. But you know, a lot of those darker shows I think did hit a lot in America. Even you look at Grave of the Fireflies, I think, which caught a lot of attention over here. Focus. There we go. And again, I don't think that's really grimdark, but we like you know, American fans of anime have generally been drawn to anime because of those dark moments, because of those serious elements, because of the fact that it wasn't He-Man or even G.I. Joe or Transformers. It felt very raw and like it was exploring difficult things, and so people kind of think that that's what we want, which is not always true. So yeah, it's tough. And then you have the shows that, you know, go dark places momentarily, that have moments that just feel a little absurdly grim out of nowhere. I think, you know, oddly, I've been thinking about Digimon a lot lately. Because a friend of mine turns out to be big into Digimon, and we really want to talk about that one of these days. But yeah, I really want to you know, point out that like season 3 of Digimon goes some really dark places. You know, there's a permanent hero character death in Digimon Tamers. It's a rough show. So, but it feels natural, I think, for what they set up in that show, despite the fact that it's very much aimed at kids. You're right, the original Gundam novel was, well, it was definitely dark. It definitely takes a different direction. So for those curious, talking about, I think I have it here somewhere. Yeah. So, what was it? Gundam Awakening, Escalation, and Confrontation are essentially 3 light novels that got you know, pushed together into one big novel and published over here, and just a very different approach ultimately on the story. So, but yeah, I mean, people die in this novel. One important character dies in this novel that does not die in the anime series. And yeah, it is much more gritty, I would say. It's much more set in a war where people just get killed off in, you know, random moments, because it's war. Like, that's what happens. I think I put up this week that video about Shigeru Mizuki, the creator of Kitaro, and how, you know, when he was serving in the Japanese military in World War II, he was in some, you know, I think in Burma somewhere, in some godforsaken bit of the jungle, and a group of they think it's Australians stumbled across his platoon and just killed everyone except him. Like, he just kind of fell on his face as, you know, they opened fire, and they thought he was dead and moved on. And you know, all of his friends and comrades are now dead, just within 5 seconds. That's what war is like. It's why it's so tragic. I've not read the novelization of Zeta. I would like to do that at some point. I'm very curious what that is, because certainly the Zeta movies rewrite that story, which is very interesting. And I would argue, you know, Zeta Gundam has, you know, the darkest ending in anime, in the sense of just hopelessness. I shouldn't say hopelessness, but just of that dark tone that just, okay, you know, everything is dark. You know, nothing's good. You know, Zeta's a rough one in the ending, and much of Zeta, I think, is and that's actually an interesting point, where I think Gundam manages to avoid the grimdark tone because it is an action show, because it's got teenagers who are often immature. And I think just in general, there's a sense in Gundam that we're making a series for more of an adolescent audience, and even in many cases a young teen audience. So we're not really going to go too heavy on those themes. Even 0080, War in the Pocket, considered one of the darkest Gundams, the tone of that overall is very much not grimdark. It's very light and quite upbeat overall. So I think Gundam manages to hit that, and certainly Macross is just a big, fun space opera thing. Again, there can be tragedy and dark moments, but it's much more of a roller coaster ride, a thrill ride, than other franchises. Speaking of, I'd be curious how the Madoka Magica movies are in tone, because I haven't seen those, and I wonder if they have a more consistent tone one way or the other. I wonder. By the way, the Gundam novel I had a bit of a difficult time reading. I don't know if it's a translation or not, but the writing is kind of stiff at times. So just be aware if you ever do read the original Gundam novel. And so basically this was Yoshiki Tomino, the original creator of Gundam. He had a different idea for how the story was supposed to go, and he kind of got voted down by the other staff members. Sunrise is a very collaborative studio. So his approach was deemed, not ideal. And so this is basically his version of how he wanted the story to end. And so it's essentially non-canonical in the sense that he's like, that's not how it turned out. That's fine. But I at least wanted folks to know, where I wanted to go with it, just kind of for future reference. Yeah, totally Meow Nyan. That movie. I do not know what they were doing, because they literally they will insert a new scene that is animated with movie quality animation budget and completely updated character designs in the middle of several scenes from the original show. So just completely reused material. Like the first movie is mostly just the TV show, just re-edited, and then just these occasional shots that are suddenly, 30 frames per second animation, and it's just very jarring. By the final movie, it's almost all new animation, but it's just really weird. So I love the new ending of Zeta, but that choice was kind of a tough one. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, none. I think. Well, I mean, I know why they made Zeta Gundam, but I think it was this sense of what are fans willing to support? Like, is that going to make them completely revolt, or can we do that and they're going to be okay with it? Which I think is a useful thing to know. I'm not going to be able to do this too much longer. Apologies, but my throat is closing down. So yeah, I suspect, and I think there's a fair amount of now. I think folks get a little over the top with those ideas that a big company will make an entire big budget video game or an entire movie purely as a marketing test. I don't think that happens. But I think that certainly some things are made, and sometimes folks are willing to experiment a little bit to see how folks will react. They're not trying to make something bad or something weird. They're just like, let's do this because we think it'll be good. And then we'll see if folks kind of like it, and if not, that's not going to end the world. But yeah, I think it's interesting. On the these podcasts I was listening to today, they were talking about the cancellation of the open world Star Wars game, and Amy Hennig's Star Wars game got canceled and then kind of got shifted to this open world game, or the material got shifted to this open world game concept, and that recently got canceled. And they were talking about, why would you do that? That seems crazy to have this game. Why not just make it? And I wonder if that wasn't one of these games where Amy Hennig or somebody had a really exotic idea. Like maybe there are. No, you're fine. Yeah, no one else is talking, so you're good. What if Amy just had 3 mechanics that all have to work, perfectly in synchronization, and they just couldn't make that work, and so they're like, well, we can't make this game. Like we've tried for months and months and months. We've poured all this money into it. We can't just keep on doing that, and so they moved it to someone else. And there's a new group working on it. Maybe they had some ideas, and they were working on those ideas, and those didn't work out too. Like I think folks attribute evil, or just kind of bizarre behavior to situations that are just much more prosaic, where it's like maybe they wanted to produce Zeta Gundam movies because they needed more Gundam material. And they're like, you know what, Zeta is this controversial ending. What if we went back in and we reanimated things? And I think people would be happy with that. I think people would get excited about a return to one of the most controversial Gundam series, in a way, and we could rework it and tell a different story. I think that's not a bad thing, and I think that's more often how things happen. Look up Yasuhiko's mythical works like Namuji or Arion. I have seen Arion. I love Arion. Arion's great. The anime. I've not seen Namuji though. I would like to try that. I like Yasuhiko's character designs in manga. His designs in anime, I think, are a little more. I don't know. They have this lovely rounded sense to them, but there's a great moment in. See if I can find it here. So in the original release of Gundam the Origin over here, they have these things in the back where Yasuhiko is just kind of drawing something random, and there's a little essay where that's not it. He shows that drawing to somebody, and they kind of chat about it, and that gets recorded and put into the thing. And there's a great one here. I'll see if I can find it, because to me it kind of sums up everything I think about these things. What's in here? I seem to recall. Oh, yeah, it must be in here. No. This is where they hit. No, because they haven't gotten to the beach yet. Let's see if we can find this. No. This is so weird. Maybe I just imagined it. Maybe I dreamed it. That's so strange. Like, I would swear I saw these. Maybe they were in a magazine or something. But anyway, it's this image of a whole bunch of the characters at the beach, hanging out in bikinis, and including some of the male characters, as I recall. And the conversation recorded as he's showing this to a friend of his, like a producer, is that they're kind of talking, and Yasuhiko says, "Yeah, here's the thing I just did," and he hands it to the guy, and he goes, "Oh, so this is the thing you did. What the hell is this?" Because Yasuhiko's character designs are not particularly sexy in the traditional anime way. They're a little lumpy. They're a little average, normal people. I think it's one of the appeal of his character designs is they don't look. His characters generally don't have fantastic bodies in terms of supermodel bodies. They don't look like Gundam Wing, for example. After that little line in the interview or the column, he says, "Yeah, my designs just don't really work for beach wear, right?" And I think it is one of the downsides that his characters are a little character designs are just very specific and very much of a particular style. I love Venus Wars. I think one of his great works is Venus Wars. Did he direct Venus Wars? I'm not sure. But yeah, love that movie. And I'm not suggesting his designs suck or that he hasn't evolved over time. Just it's a very different thing. Wow, for Dirty Pair, interesting. I wonder if he designed Dirty Pair or if he just designed like all the other characters. Interesting, because Dirty Pair definitely sexy girls. Although that's partly because they're just wearing bikinis all the time. Dirty Pair is one of those anime I want to sit down with maybe Evan and just watch Dirty Pair again, because it's just such a fun, ridiculous concept and universe, and it embraces that. It's just big, space opera-esque, but well, not space opera. It is what do you call it? Sci-fi action, right? It just feels big and good and fun, but and it's not trying to be the Odyssey, right? It's not trying to be deep and complex. It'll have some dark backstory moments, But in general, it's just, okay, half naked girls with guns running around causing massive property damage while trying to get people out of various things. Venus Wars is just fun. And you just kind of have to sit back and understand that that's very much what it is. It is, it is not trying to be serious. It is not trying to challenge you. It is not trying to not be sexy or any of that stuff. It is just this thing. Nice. First OVA, Dirty Pair. My first OVA was technically Dominion Tank Police. First one I rented. I don't think I've ever rented any anime. I'm sure I did. Oh yeah, I rented anime. Back with Netflix on DVD. But I can't think of the first. Well, I know a few OVAs. I know a few TV series I rented. Did I rent any OVAs? Wow. Yeah, the first OVA I saw was Dominion Tank Police on the Sci-Fi Channel. Back when they were interesting, if you would. I totally agree, Roger Devilman. I think Dirty Pair would work totally well today. I think you get Trigger on that. That would just be blow people's minds. Dirty Pair remake. Let's be honest. Darling in the Franxx is, or the animation style of Darling in the Franxx is very much, and Trigger in general is very much Dirty Pair. I like Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Cannot get past the first episode of either the original or the remake. I recognize the epic scale of the storytelling, and I usually love that stuff, but I don't care about anyone. And I suspect it's one of those things where you're supposed to watch the first 20 episodes before you really go into it. Exactly. I think Tarantino would do Dirty Pair tomorrow. I'd love to see his Dirty Pair. Although I don't know that you could. Without making it, so there's this character Vampirella. I think I talked about this at some point, where she just wears a sling bikini. That's her entire costume, and they tried to make it in live action several times, but every time they do, her outfit falls off. There's nowhere to attach the outfit, and so her let's just say her body is constantly swinging free of the outfit. Focus. There we go. So, I think Dirty Pair would have that problem where you'd have to very carefully design those outfits so they could live up to the wear and tear of a photo shoot or a movie shoot. But yeah, I think Legend of the Galactic Heroes is one of those things that is clearly amazing, but I can't get into it. Such is life. That is so bizarre. Those moments where you're watching something, maybe using the hardback. Yeah. There's some text in the back. Okay, some bonus essays. Some artwork. Oh, that's cool. I'd forgotten about that. Check this out. What does that look like to you? Hey, Rockman. That is Amuro Ray drawn by Clamp. I kid you not. That was a thing that happened. Pretty awesome, huh? Well, the thing, Raja, is tape absolutely works when you're walking around a convention center, but when you're doing an action scene and you have to leap, it falls apart. You can physically wear a costume just to walk from point A to point B, but any action scenes, you're done. Yeah, Bishi Amuro. It's funny, Meow Nyan, I just saw on Netflix that Jinro trailer, because I was flipping through and they were like, things recommended for you, and I was just kind of going through, and I saw Jinro, but it was Jilan, the Wolf Brigade, and I was like, wait a minute. So I clicked on the trailer and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a Korean live action Jinro, the Wolf Brigade, but done as a commentary on Korea. It is set in a future where Korea is being forced back together and it's causing all this civil unrest, and America and China and Japan are now the enemy, and they're forcing Korea to change, and it's this very fraught political moment. I'm like, dang, that's really interesting. And so I checked out the first like minute or two, and I was like yeah, like this is Jinro, like they're doing it. And obviously, Korean cinema has been crushing it for years, going all the way back to Old Boy. So no in other words, they certainly could do it, but that's a tough property to adapt, and to do so in a way that kind of makes sense, where there's a lot of there's a lot of story there that you have to adapt. Jinro is about a very particular point in Japanese history, commenting on that moment. So Good Years, it's a good movie. So yeah, impressive, very interesting. And I wonder, like that's not a well-known property. I think it's fairly well-known in Japan. And so maybe over in Asia, it's a fairly recognizable property, enough to license it and make your own version in Korea. But that's really interesting. Yeah, I'm very interested in in that Jinro movie. It's hard because so many South Korean movies are like romantic comedies, and like I like a romantic comedy, but I'm not necessarily going to sit down and spend an hour and a half watching one. Um, yeah. Well, City Hunter was there a Korean City Hunter? I'm thinking of the Jackie Chan movie, which is Hong Kong. Um, so I'm not sure, but yeah, going back, the good, the bad, and the weird, amazing, Western basically set in sort of Wild West Korea. Really cool film. Yeah, there's plenty of cool stuff there. Yeah, Old Boy was a revelation for me. Watching Old Boy, I was like, whoa! Like this is not a movie. It's obviously more close to say Japanese cinema than anything else, but it felt new. It felt relevant, and it felt like a distinct cinematic style that was now growing and maturing over there in Korea. And they certainly have the money for it. They certainly have the talent for it, the skill, the technology and such. So yeah, Korean live action movies really cool. Yeah, and apparently, like I know I've seen City Hunter. I've seen most Jackie Chan movies, I think, but I've seen a lot of them. I don't know if I've seen most of them. That's a big filmography, but yeah, I think I remember City Hunter being one of those things where no, this is City Hunter. Like we all know what City Hunter is. We know this property. We're not pretending this isn't City Hunter, but it kind of morphed into just a generic Jackie Chan movie, which I love standard Jackie Chan movies, which didn't really feel very City Hunter. didn't really match the tone of that manga very well. So just bizarre. And again, that could be one of those things where they were like, well, but is anyone gonna? But is it gonna make sense to put Jackie Chan in a dark noir film? Right? Is that approach going to work? New City Hunter, cool. Yeah, one nice thing about modern anime is that we're certainly getting that animation quality back from that moment where, like in the 2010 period, the animation quality in anime just took a nosedive. It's amazing going back and watching like Fairy Tail Memories and Melodies, and watching those shows, and you're like, no one's moving. Like there's just no movement in these shows, and this was one of the big shows of the season, or of the year, and just there was nothing, and we certainly are getting those budgets back. I think as anime is broadening into other markets, China's opened up, Korea's really opened up, not in the legal sense, but in the sense that they're very hungry for that content and consuming it legally, and buying the stuff and buying the merch and so forth. I think the Bandai folks were saying that China's, I think, their second biggest market now outside Japan. So I mean it's a big market, but that's a significant thing where like it's not just bootlegs. Like the Chinese market is buying Gunpla and watching it and so forth. So it's a cool thing. Yeah, it's always cool seeing those crossovers between various things. Okay. My throat is closing down. I apologize, everyone, but that's gonna have to be it for the stream this week. Tomorrow we'll be watching all the shows of the season, or most of them, as many as we can get to. And I completely agree with Mian. I think City Hunter is very much a thing of the 80s. Although I think you can adapt that modernly. I think, look at Banana Fish. I think you can take properties set in a very specific time and do it in a tone that feels appropriate with modern animation. I think it could be done, but you're right. It'll be hard. So yeah, check the Discord tomorrow morning. I will drop a link in there to the Rabbit room where I'll be hosting a whole bunch of the new season episodes, and we'll hang out. So thank you, Mian. Thanks, everyone. As always, it's great hanging out with you all. Hope this is helpful. And until next time, have a good one.